Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by an awesome progressive running for state senate in Pennsylvania, Shanna Danielson. How you doing, Shanna?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for it's PA Senate seat 31, 31st district, which is like Cumberland County and York. Pull up a map of the district as we get further in. But I've been trying to add news of the day questions to these interviews. So in Pennsylvania, I'm going to be very generous and say venerable Pat Toomey has announced that he's retiring in 2022. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Bye. Yes. So yeah, it's hard. I feel like we're in this place where Pat Toomey is like, he's hidden. He's really hard to get a hold of, but now suddenly he's like stealing the thunder from those of us who've been working our tails off for months and months for this election that's coming up in a month. But now everyone's talking about 2022. So I know it'll be exciting, but no, my thoughts are, I'm excited to work to elect a senator in 2022 who actually works for people and not hides in his office. But in the interim, we've got a lot of work to do right now. So
yeah, here. Like you, when I heard the news, I was like, oh, who can we run in 2022? That's my first, who in PA is a progressive that, could, make a serious go of it. So yeah, like you said, your election is obviously the general election. You made it through a contested primary. You are sort of a grassroots candidate, shannaforpa.com. So election day is November 3rd. So, if you can volunteer, you have a mechanism on your website, which I will pull up in a moment too, for phone banking, text banking. Donations are greatly appreciated, I'm sure. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your platform. So you did run in 2018 and you kind of overperformed, I guess, expectations for what a Democrat might do. And, it's a generally red district, right?
Yeah.
And then, you're running again in 22, made it through the primary, like I mentioned. What did you learn then? Like, how's the momentum growing? Did you build enough name recognition? Like, what's it feel like?
Yeah, I like to talk about this because that 2018 campaign, sometimes folks who aren't as familiar with our area or like my story will see that and they're like, wow, like you got crushed. Like, why are you running again? And there's a big difference between the state house district where I ran and also where I was as a human and as a political candidate in 2018 versus where we are now. So a little bit of background. I ran for state house in 2018, and that was not my plan. That was never my intention. I, like a lot of folks, sometimes things happen in life that just like stir you to action. And for me, I've been paying attention to politics the entire time I've been teaching. So since about 2008, 2009, when Governor Corbett was elected in Pennsylvania, in 2010, my interest ratcheted up considerably because I felt like my entire career I've been in, trying to dig out of this massive cut to education. And so I've been fired up about politics for a while, active with my union, with PSEA. And then Sandy Hook happened. And I think all teachers of young children or any children, all teachers felt something really change in us when that happened. Just a horrible tragedy to have to look at your students, 3 days later and explain to them, not only how something like that could happen, but where you would hide them, which corner of the closet are we going to go into if someone tries to hurt you at school? And that's never a thing that any child or educator or human should have to deal with. So gun violence prevention has been really important to me for a long time, but we were living in McKean County, which is a beautiful, rural, gorgeous area of Pennsylvania where there are not a lot of people and therefore not a lot of opportunities to engage in, in things like Moms Demand Action, which when we moved down here several years ago, the Las Vegas shooting happened. And immediately within a week, I was in a mom's meeting. That meeting changed my life. I met incredible people. And then I went to an Indivisible meeting and learned what committee people were in your local party. Like in McKean County at that time, I didn't even know there was a Democratic Party. So when we were down here, I was like, oh, hey, York County, like making stuff happen. Little did I know at the time how much work was ahead of us, but that work is happening. Anyway, I left that indivisible meeting and I called up, the York County Democratic Party, and I was like, who's my committee person? I just learned what these are. And they said, no one, you. And I was like, cool, I'm a committee woman now. Like, this is exciting. I went to a meeting. I was sitting in and amongst all these lieutenant governor candidates. And I was like, this is so cool. And then I went back to that indivisible group the following month. And I left as a candidate for state house, because sometimes when you're fired up, you just make crazy decisions. I had no campaign team when I walked into that meeting, but I had one when I left. People that I had just met, who are still my very best friends and have become family. We launched the Northern York Democratic Club. So that campaign was very much an accountability campaign. No one should run unopposed. We knocked thousands of doors, and we activated a lot of folks, and we got like 31% of the vote, which is small. But
no, yeah, from zero. I mean, that's not small. It's your perspective, right? That's amazing, actually.
Yeah. And like I said, we formed this Northern York Democratic Club. I just learned so much during that process about like, wow, things are so much worse than I thought they were. When you run, you learn much more stuff about policy and about how things get done, or in Pennsylvania, how things never get done. And I was inspired. So I applied for Emerge Pennsylvania, which is an incredible training program for Democratic women. I was accepted. I got to spend 6 months in that program, learning from incredible women, running alongside some incredible women this year. There's like 31 of us on the ballot in Pennsylvania that are Emerge grads. And everything's different. People ask this question a lot: what's changed from that campaign? Number one, I'm running in a very different district. The state Senate district is much larger. It includes a large portion of Cumberland County, which until last year was the fastest growing county in the Commonwealth. Democrats are out registering Republicans. The Republicans no longer hold an outright majority in Cumberland County when you mix in independents and others. And Governor Wolf won that district in 2018 in an area that had never voted for a statewide Democrat. So there's a lot going on. Plus, we have Eugene DePasquale running for Congress here, which is one of the most watched congressional races in the entire country. So there are a lot of things that make Senate District 31 a very different game than it was 4 years ago.
That's great. Let me pull it up since you're talking about it. So it's PA 31. You mentioned some of the real estate there. I'd like to give people an opportunity to brag about their district, right? Just somewhat fluff. You mentioned some of the politics of it, but what makes District 31 awesome?
District 30, I liked it. We have everything here. I live in a little town called Dillsburg, which is right at the very top of York County. So we get all of the rural, beautiful farmland and small town feel that is York County here. We are right on Route 15, so it's just a short drive to Gettysburg. Down the road, you're in Maryland in no time. Or if you go north on 15, you drive into Cumberland County, where we have Camp Hill, Lemoyne, New Cumberland, Mechanicsburg. Carlisle is a beautiful little city that's home to Dickinson College. We have Messiah University here. So we've got small town college feel. We have rural farmland. There's a stretch along Route 74 from my house to Carlisle that is the most beautiful scenic drive with the view of the mountains in the entire world. I swear by it. We have everything here. We're right across the river from Harrisburg, which is incredible for arts, for culture, for politics. You want to make some noise, 10 minutes up the road. Actually, after Justice Ginsburg passed a couple of weeks ago, I was feeling distraught. I knew I couldn't make it to DC, so I organized a vigil at the federal courthouse in Harrisburg, and it's just right across the river. So we have access. It's really nice to be able to respond rapidly when bad legislation comes up, to just get in my car and go and yell on the steps or schedule those meetings. We're close to everything. All the major highways intersect here, so you can be in Philly or DC or Pittsburgh, in a relatively short period of time. And we've got it all. We've got absolutely everything. There's outdoor recreation, state parks. It's a perfect place to live. Awesome.
And Boiling Springs is in your district. I have family and friends in Boiling Springs. Shout out to Boiling Springs. Since we're here, I want to pull up your website, shannaforpa.org. Here's where you can volunteer. Here's where you can donate, right? She has issues page, which is pretty clear. You have pretty clear language, and we'll get into that as we go here. But I just want to highlight your endorsements. You have a lot of endorsements, right? You mentioned gun violence prevention, right? Ceasefire, Every Town Moms, et cetera, right? You got Now, Working Families, Planned Parenthood, right? A lot of really awesome endorsements here. So go check out her page. It's shannaforpa.org, and I'll plug it several times as we go, of course. Um, so let me ask about the gun violence prevention thing, right? So you hit on it. You hit on the active shooter drills. I have a friend who's a special needs teacher, and every year she has to the kids that are in wheelchairs that can't be hidden, right? She has to confront that every year, and that's just terrorism. That's horrible, right? Can you talk about I guess some of the gun violence prevention action, right? I know, the common sense gun, legislation that we're fighting for. Can you talk about the Charleston loophole? Can you just talk about just some of the things that you would like to work on in the area of gun violence prevention in the PA state?
Sure. Like I said, this issue, I was in 5th grade, I think, or maybe 6th grade when Columbine happened. So like I've kind of grown up with this issue, and I've seen how much worse it has gotten with our inaction. And both as a mom myself and as a teacher, you get that different perspective. My son is in 1st grade this year, but last year as a kindergartner, they were scheduled to have an active shooter drill within the 1st week of school. So within his 1st week of being in a public school, he was to have that experience. He was not in school that day, but that is terrifying to me. There are things, a lot of people come at me about this issue, and I love to have this conversation. I love to engage on this issue because I live in an area where there are a lot of rural gun owners, and I get that. And it's interesting to walk this line between gun violence prevention is a huge issue for me, but also I completely understand and respect gun culture in Pennsylvania. This is a huge part of life here, both collectors, sports shooting, hunting. Where I used to teach in Cameron County, my 5th graders are coming in with pictures of the bloody deer they shot in the woods. And I'm like, ew, but also that's awesome because they work so hard for that and they take it so seriously. And so having these conversations with folks, I don't know all of it because I don't own firearms. That's just never been an interest of mine. So I like to learn from folks around here. Tell me what you think I don't know, and let's figure this out. But we can all agree that we have a problem in this country, and there are things we can do at the state level to address this problem because waiting for Congress hasn't worked out so well. So Pennsylvania, I was really proud to be part of Moms Demand Action. Pennsylvania did finally pass a domestic violence bill that would disarm those who have final PFAs or convicted of domestic abuse. That's huge. Women and men who are in abusive relationships deserve to have that kind of security. The Charleston loophole is another just frustrating thing where you feel like we're doing the right thing by enacting laws that say you have to wait for a background check. But then if the background check isn't completed on time, those folks can just buy the gun anyway because of an administrative error. And that's terrifying. And not so much, I know you can't stop every bad thing from happening, and mass shootings are horrific and they grip headlines and they give us all the feelings, but we're losing a startling number of Pennsylvanians and Americans to gun suicide every year. 2/3 of gun deaths are suicide. And so what can we do to help keep these folks alive, to get them the help that they need? And that waiting period can be a lifesaver for people. It can prevent tragedies, both personal and on a mass scale. And so, that's something that's just incredibly frustrating. In Pennsylvania, we're working towards an extreme risk protection order bill right now that would allow friends or family or law enforcement to petition a court to remove firearms from someone who is in crisis or at risk of harming themselves or others. Again, we don't want to take anyone's due process. We're not trying to skirt the Constitution or whatever other things they throw at us when we talk about this, but we want to help keep people safe.
Yeah, I appreciate you talking about that, especially the Charleston loophole, because that's one that doesn't get enough recognition, right? It's, just to reiterate it, if you go for a gun and do the background check, it's 48 hours, I think it is, or maybe 72. If you don't get the response back, the NIC or whatever, then the default answer is, oh, you get your gun,
Right.
not oh, we need more time, or no, right, try
Yeah.
again. The default answer is, and it's named the Charleston loophole after the murderer Dylan Roof, who did the Emmanuel AME mass shooting. So yeah, that one, that's like such a no brainer. So yeah, I appreciate your work on all that front. Let's talk about just some other policy. I know as a teacher, as a working mom, right? Your focus is on working families, and I'm going to prompt you on a few things about that. First up, the unfair tax burden that goes to working families versus, say, the top 1%. Can you talk about that?
Say those who pay $750 or $0.
Right, right.
And Pennsylvania has this in our constitution, which makes it a little bit trickier in our state. But I'm a big fan of the work of the folks at the Keystone Research Center here, the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center. They've put together this incredible We the People platform that kind of hits on all of these issues that are important for working families, for labor, and this is one of those issues. So our Constitution, makes it very difficult to change the taxes the way that we tax folks. However, if we separate out what you're earning in income, like earned income from wages, from income from wealth, we can tax those at different rates. We would be able to close massive gaps in our budget by asking the wealthy few to pay their fair share. When you look at the percentage of income that lower income folks and middle class folks are paying, we're actually paying a higher percentage of our income in various taxes than folks who are sitting at the top. And so this isn't about demonizing rich people. This isn't about trying to, I hear all the time, well, if they worked for it, why should we take it? And it's like, well, because they drive on our roads too, because they send kids to school too, because we provide services to everyone. And so everyone should pay what is fair. And if we're going to do this based on percentage of income, that would, it just seems like common sense to me.
Yeah. So when you in your red district, so there probably aren't a lot of billionaires in your district.
Not too many.
I'm going to just guess, right? So this is one of those policies that would benefit your district. In no way would it harm your district to have a more fair and balanced, tax policy, right? So, and on the guns thing, right? You mentioned the sort of the framing. Democrats, people on the left have always, you always have to almost internalize the we're not trying to take anybody's guns away. Like you almost have to always lead with that, right? How do you overcome that, that default right-wing framing on these clearly people-centric that would benefit, if you're a responsible gun owner, why would you not want every other gun owner to be responsible? It's not that complicated, right? So how do you overcome that right-wing framing to get to that people-centered message?
I have conversations with people.
Yeah.
That maybe seems like a really simple answer.
Right.
And, I always go back to my Parks and Rec fandom of season 1, Leslie Knope saying, I just hear people caring loudly at me. And sometimes people care loudly at me when I call them. Sometimes people unsolicited care loudly at me on my voicemail. And sometimes it's frustrating because you're like, but what I want to do is going to help you too, right? But when you have that conversation with folks, and I've had several conversations with Republicans, with folks who call and they're like, you're backwards on this gun thing. And I'm like, okay, tell me how you feel. What am I wrong on? What am I getting wrong? And we have a conversation. You can almost always, not always, but almost always get to an agreement, because that's what normal functioning adults do. We come to agreements when we know that it's mutually beneficial to do so. And unfortunately, the adults in Harrisburg do not seem to operate that way, because they won't even bring up bills or talk to each other. And it's madness, right? And so when I'm having these conversations with people about guns or about, the police or property taxes or anything that people want to talk about, we're able to have a conversation. And sometimes we say, well, I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree. Right. But you wouldn't do that if it was your job to solve the problem. You can have those disagreements with folks on the phone, but it's a lot different when it's your job to make life better for folks. And that's why I'm so proud to be running right now with these amazing people in Pennsylvania who are just putting it all out there. And we're having these tough conversations. We're not just calling Democrat. I mean, a lot of us would lose if we only talked to our own, right? And you deserve to lose if you only talk to your own, because you don't just represent people who think like you. And so, I like those conversations. Sometimes they get a little testy, but most of the time they're passionate on both ends and they have incredible resolutions. And that's what we need more of in government.
Yeah, and your policies are people centered. I got that term from Carrie Evelyn Harris. They're very focused on people. So you support paid family medical leave, ending cash bail, which puts a burden on poor people basically, right? $15 minimum wage. You support legalizing and taxing marijuana, which would be a boon for an economy, a state economy. Plus, not even mentioning, the sort of decriminalization aspects of it, right? Mm-hmm. And as a teacher, you support expanding funding for public education, right? And, which, if you are a citizen that relies on public education, which is the majority of us, you're under assault from charter school funding encroaching on public funding for, public school education, right? Can you talk about that from a teacher perspective, and I guess everything that's in that too, teacher salaries, buying your own supplies. Talk about your education platform.
Buying your own supplies. We had a tweet. My campaign manager is brilliant, and he's like, what do you think about this? And so we tweeted a couple of weeks ago, I spent more out of pocket on school supplies in a year for my public school students than Donald Trump spent on taxes. And we actually got a mention in a Washington Post article for that tweet because it was very popular. But it's true.
Sorry to interrupt, but even if you were the most strident Trump supporter and you heard that is an objective fact, right? How could you not be offended by that, right? On both sides.
Yeah. So we're in this weird place where in March, when kind of the world shut down, teachers were heroes, right? Because we were all trying to figure this out, just like everybody else. I taught middle school band, so I'm teaching 15-minute individual lessons through Zoom on my ancient computer at home while my 6-year-old is running around like a lunatic while he should have been doing his kindergarten work. But you try homeschooling a kindergartner virtual. It was not homeschool; it was crisis school, and I want to make a very clear distinction. It was madness, right? And so teachers were viewed as wow, sorry, we didn't realize how hard your job was. But then suddenly, as the summer went on and folks were realizing things are going to be crazy if we can't send our kids back to school, teachers were now demonized again, like we were used to before, because it was our fault that we didn't want our kids coming into unsafe learning conditions. Or, in Pennsylvania, we didn't really get clear-cut guidance from the Department of Education or from the state that made it easy enough for school districts to make those decisions in a timely fashion. I know I have left my teaching position to focus 100% on the campaign, which was a very difficult choice to make. But given everything that's happening this year, I do feel was the right decision, because the importance of what I can do in the Senate compared, but I know the district where I was teaching decided 3 days before in-service was supposed to start that we were going to be starting virtually. We were under the impression when things began that kids were going to come in a hybrid model, and that switched. Like I said, we found out about 10 minutes before the community. And so there's just a lot of misconceptions sometimes between what happens in the community, what families are feeling, what's happening in administration, and what's happening as teachers. We spend a ridiculous amount of our own money because we can't get supplies. I had to buy the paper for my concert programs because we didn't have red and green paper in my school district. So I had to go to Staples on my lunch break and buy it and come back and run the copies for the program. And that's just one example. And I'm sure that what I spent is nothing compared to what a lot of folks do. I taught middle school band. We had over 30 instruments that were in such state of disrepair that they couldn't be saved, but I couldn't get any new ones because it wasn't in the budget. And so I struggled, like I said, as a music teacher, especially right after an economic crash in 2008, great time to be entering the job market, by the way, when I graduated in December of 2008. And so my entire career had been trying to play catch up for just cuts upon cuts upon cuts. And our Governor Wolf, finally restored funding levels to where they should have been when he took office, but we're still 6 years behind where we need to be. So an aim for me is,
and that's just at a level. That's not even investing. That's not even in growing.
Correct.
That's just to maintain.
That's getting us to where we should have been
right
years ago. And so we have this other problem in Pennsylvania where the way we fund our schools is just so painfully inequitable. I live in York County. My son attends Northern York School District. Things are pretty good here. Down the street, 40 minutes in New York City, they just laid off a large number of teachers and instructional aides. Mm-hmm. And so we have this problem where we have a fair funding formula, but we're only running new education money through it. And so everything else is like this set formula where there are districts in the suburbs of Philadelphia who are getting exorbitant amounts of money compared to what we are getting. And so, I know there is legislation to try and move all education funding through that fair funding formula. And I would really like to get us to that place. I think it's going to be a transition period. You can't take that much from one school district immediately. It will be a phase in, sure. but we have to address that inequity.
Yeah. And teachers' salaries, I don't know if you want to go on the records, but, Bernie sort of put out there $60K as a minimum. Do you support something like that or that explicitly?
I think that would be amazing. I wasn't making that. Even now, after teaching for 10 years with a master's degree, I wasn't making $60,000. And I think there are certainly places where teachers make a lot more. There are places where teachers make a lot less. And the problem we have right now with the way that we're funding things is if we put that mandate out there, school districts are going to be in a really tough position, a lot of them, because they just don't have that extra money. And so it would be nice to see a federal fix here. We also have this problem where we're running into a huge teacher shortage, and it's painfully obvious right now trying to find substitutes before we were in a pandemic. There were so many times last year where every day you walk into the office and the secretaries are frazzled because they're trying to find people who can cover because we don't have enough subs. So, hey, can you give up your plan period today to go cover 5th grade English? Or can you go do 6th grade social studies? Like, I can't tell you how many times we were asked to do that. And that's tough. That's really tough. When you don't have subs, how much can we really deliver? I'm a music teacher. I can't really teach 8th grade math, but cool, kids, open your book it's awful. It's not an ideal situation. And so this is getting to crisis levels. And so if we had better pay for teachers, we might be able to retain them. I can't tell you how many friends I have in education who graduated when I did or around the same time I did and aren't teaching anymore. Myself included. I left for a very different reason, but I'm not sure if I'll go back. It's a really hard time to be a teacher right now.
Yeah, that's part of the purpose of doing a policy like that is you attract people to the profession, you retain them, like you said, right? You didn't really quite get into it, but the charter school taking public education funding, that is one of those things that needs to be repaired in order to be able to fund proper salaries for teachers, right?
Yeah, and we're going to have this next year is going to be really tricky because we have lost so many, and I understand it, pandemic, but we have lost so many students out of traditional public schools into these cyber charters because they just felt more confident because it was a little hectic in the spring. They weren't sure their school districts were going to be able to deliver a real curriculum. Parents were concerned, and I understand that. The issue we're going to run into is cyber charters do not cost the same amount for to educate a child. It does not cost the same amount to educate a child when you have to give them a computer and everything is delivered to them electronically. And so our school districts were level funded this year, but they're going to take a huge hit if we don't address this. And I have to say, I know it's not always popular in progressive circles. I'm not inherently against charter schools. I think there are charter schools that serve a really important purpose in our educational landscape. There are, even here in our region, there's a performing arts charter school in Harrisburg. I know there's one in the Lehigh Valley as well. I've had students who were bullied so severely that they needed to leave because their issues were not being addressed. And most of them end up coming back when they leave for reasons of that nature. But but not all of them. And so there are kids who really thrive in that setting. That I know, not my kid. I know he really struggled with virtual learning in the spring. But I'm not against charter schools, right? I think they serve a purpose. But what we have to do is we have to make sure that they're getting the level of funding that they need, and not necessarily equating, the money that it takes to educate that child in a traditional school, because it's just not the same, and we have to fix that. And if we're going to send our kids and our money to those institutions, they need to be held to the same standards as our public schools.
Right on. Yeah. The issue is that it's always a frontline battle, because the profit motive is always there. It's like running water, right? So you have to be vigilant and defensive about that funding, indefinitely, pretty much, right? So
it's so hard as an educator when people think about schools as a business, because schools are not a business. And I know that folks push back on me about that, but I've been in public school since I started in kindergarten. I haven't really left, and it's just you can't put that kind of spin on public schools. We're not cranking out a product, right? These are human lives. These are precious little souls, and our job is to educate them and get them to love learning, and not to make them into little like accounting robots or whatever. Like we need to foster a sense of creativity and passion in our kids, and you don't do that in a business, really.
Yeah, I love it. And to not terrorize them with active shooter drills. Like, imagine the repercussions of that psychologically in the decades to come. It's just
I'm an adult, and I can tell you we did one on an in-service day when there were no kids, and it scarred me.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Let me ask about universal healthcare. So you support that, and I imagine that's one of those things. Like, again, the right wing framing is, even now they're accusing Joe Biden of being a socialist and blah blah blah. He fought against Medicare for all, and if it's just a bad faith argument, right? So and yet again, people, especially in a pandemic, reality endorsed Medicare for all. It endorsed universal broadband, investment in rural areas, things like that. I don't know if in your district you have rural hospitals that are, closing because they're not making money or any of that stuff, right? Can you talk about what universal healthcare would mean to PA 31?
Yeah, so we're in a different position. I know in Michelle Siegel's district that is a reality, that there are hospitals that have closed. We actually have kind of the opposite problem, where they keep building hospitals. We almost have too many hospitals. It's weird. They're like literally everywhere, and they're putting up another one. We have all these competing markets. So that like Penn State Health is building new facilities on the West Shore, and we have UPMC, and we have Geisinger Holy Spirit, and all of these. They're all here, in addition to what's on the East Shore over in Harrisburg. So we have a different problem where it's almost like we're oversaturated with access to healthcare. I go back and forth on this word, because it's like I do want everyone to have access to healthcare, but technically here you get in your car and you could be at some kind of healthcare provider in minutes, no matter where you live. In Dover, you're really close to York City, and up here where I am in Dillsburg, we're just super close to Mechanicsburg and Camp Hill, and like there's hospitals everywhere here. The problem is the bill, right? The problem here isn't so much I can't get care if I need it; it's I can't afford to get care if I need it, and that's really the issue. And you said about socialism, and I have this quote on my wall. A good friend of mine, anytime someone starts advocating for working class people, we're called socialists. And so like that just rolls off my back now, because, I've lived this healthcare struggle myself, not to the extent that a lot of people have, but I know what it's like to have to think, do I really need that MRI? Like maybe I can just deal with this pain. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I can just keep taking Advil and wear a brace and it'll go away. Because I've gotten, those surprise medical bills. I had to have an MRI a couple of months ago. They told me what it was going to cost. I went back and forth. I just don't know if we can swing this right now. We decided my pain was bad enough. We decided I should get it. And then I ended up getting billed several $100s more than what I was told. and there wasn't really a whole lot I could do about it because they just gave me wrong information. My dad just went through cancer treatments, and he had to drive 2 hours to get to the hospital that would work with his insurance, and they have to come up with thousands of dollars out of pocket so that he could stay alive. And I'm grateful for things like the American Cancer Society, but why do we have to depend on charity when we get sick? It's not like I asked for these joint issues. He didn't ask to get cancer. It wasn't some like side effect of his lifestyle. It's sometimes these things happen to you, and why should you have to be bankrupt because of it? And I tell people all the time, we may not agree on things. I still think you deserve healthcare, right? You may think I'm a crazy socialist. That's fine. I still think you shouldn't have to go bankrupt just because you get sick. So call me what you want to call me, but I will not budge on that. And I don't know that we can enact that the way it needs to be enacted at the state level, but there are certainly things we can do at the state level to try and make healthcare more affordable. It's not an issue here of, can I get to a doctor? It's, I can't muster the will to go to the doctor because I know what it will do to my finances. And it's terrifying.
Yeah. 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 Thanks for that quote and sharing that. Yeah. I mean, we all, and for those of us that are mortal, we're going to have some issue or another, right? Whether you're blue or red, or, whether you cling to your guns or whatever, right? Whatever your voting mechanism is, like, that, you are immortal and you're going to need, healthcare at some point, and it could bankrupt you, right? So, this is one of those voting in your self-interest things. I can't wrap my head around someone voting the opposite direction. Any other policies that we didn't hit on that you want to highlight? There's, again, your website, shannaforpa.com. You have a lot of issues on there. We covered a lot of ground. Anything you want to highlight that we didn't hit on?
Yeah, I think, just this entire package of ideals around centering working families when we're passing legislation, whether that's raising the minimum wage, whether that's making it easier for folks to organize in their workplace. We have a childcare crisis here where it costs more to send your kid to preschool than it does to send them to college. That's a real problem. We're recovering from this pandemic in a way where we've got $1.3 billion in federal money sitting in our treasury that our state government won't allocate when people are suffering. There's an affordable housing crisis here, especially in Cumberland County. Our climate, I have a 6-year-old son. I cannot watch the news and see the West Coast burning and feel any sense of calm about the world that we are leaving him if we don't change course, if we don't stop, fracking and move to renewable energy. All of the things, right? All of the things. Our state government is a hotbed of corruption, and it's sickening. There's a House Resolution 1032 right now. They're trying to form some special commission to be able to subpoena ballots and do things for the election, but there's no language in there that says, but after the election. They're basically trying to give themselves power. A lot of folks are looking at this as a backdoor power grab for them to be able to change the electors for our state. Judicial gerrymandering is something new that's come up, where now they want to draw seats for judges instead of having us elect them statewide. Regular gerrymandering. This is a census year, folks. Fill out your census if you didn't, by the way, because you still have time to do that. But we're going to redraw the lines. And I don't know about you, but I'm real tired of living in a place where they get to decide in Harrisburg who they represent instead of us getting to decide who represents us. So we have crap campaign finance laws in Pennsylvania. We're a mess, folks. Pennsylvania is a hot mess, and we need folks in there who care about issues like this. I know they're not always fun to talk about, but nothing will get better if we don't address these very serious problems.
Yeah, no kidding. And this is the state house is in flippable range, right? There's only a few seats difference. The Republicans control it now, but your race, Michelle's race, there are a lot of races that this can flip, right? And make a massive difference. And who wouldn't love to see, you remind me of Katie Porter. I'd love to see you on the PA.
That is such a big compliment. I love her.
You got to bring your whiteboard to the PA Senate floor and start doing math, right? That'd be great.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about how terrible the incumbent is. His name is Mike Regan. Do you have any comment on him?
I'm running against someone who has represented with a very far right ideology for a very long time. He served as a state representative in the district where I ran, which is 2-to-1 Republican registration. So you're allowed to be a little bit more crazy ideologue because there's not as much backlash. But this state Senate district, that is not the case. This is growing to be a very purple district. And that's just not the way he's been leading. His record speaks for itself. He's scored like a 0% on the environmental scorecard this year. He's funded by big corporations and polluters, all the things that basically keep people like me up at night. And I look at I say this all the time, and I know we think about this nationally too. Has my life gotten any better in the last 4 years? And the answer is a resounding no, because I am still drowning in student debt because I went to a public university so that I could be a public school teacher, and I have enough student debt to buy another house. We still can't really afford to pay all of our bills, and by all accounts, we're a middle class family, and so I'm just polar opposite. I want to focus on helping people. I have a state senator right now who shows up for a photo op, but is really difficult to get a hold of. And when I'm calling Republicans and I'm calling independents and when I'm calling Democrats, we're talking about constituent services. I want to help you when you have a problem, and I might not know the answer, but I'm going to find it for you, right? And unfortunately, my own experience with Senator Regan in 2017, he voted for a bill that would have allowed teachers to carry guns in school. I'm a teacher and a mother, and I had feelings about that, and I wanted to call and let that be known. I don't think I was disrespectful, but I stated my opinion, and his staffer screamed at me on the phone that if I didn't support that bill, then I didn't care about kids. And I have never forgotten that. Last year, I spent about 7 weeks trying to get a meeting about raising the minimum wage. And I was told several times by the person on the phone, like, oh, yep, you're on our agenda for a scheduling meeting. But somehow I never got scheduled. And I just feel like we can't live in this world where you only talk to people who think like you do. Because I might not agree with Republicans in my district on certain issues, but it is my job to listen to them and to try and learn something from that. So I'm not going to comment on his character. I'm sure he's a nice person. I don't know him personally, but I can tell you that he's certainly not living up to the responsibilities of his position, and I intend to.
Yeah, right on. Any chance of a debate? We're kind of getting up to the last minute here.
Yeah, we were hoping. There's local media usually hosts things of that nature, but we've been getting a lot of separate segments lately. So we don't have anything confirmed as of now, but I would love the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, before I thank you for all your efforts and all that stuff, is there anybody else on your slate or in your area or on your ballot that you want to make mention of that you're also running with?
Yeah, I am living in maybe the most exciting part of Pennsylvania this year. It's not the suburbs of Philly or Pittsburgh, right? It's South Central PA, and we are like a hotbed of activity. So I had mentioned earlier, we have Eugene DePasquale, who is our current state auditor general running for Congress here in one of the most watched congressional districts in the country. He's up in the polls right now because my current congressman is a conspiracy theorist who would not vote to condemn QAnon, real stand-up guy. And there are some state house candidates in this area also who are incredible. And we're running on these bold progressive platforms because we're talking about working class issues. So Tara Shakespeare, who is running in State House District 88, is a good friend of mine, an amazing human being with a powerful story. She's running for State House in Cumberland County. Nicole Miller is running for State House in District 87. Again, an incredibly moving and just touching personal story about things that she has dealt with in her life that will make her an amazing state representative. And there are a number of state house candidates on the East Shore as well, over in Harrisburg and in Dauphin County. Brittany Rodas, who's in a very hotly watched seat, Lindsay Drew and Patty Smith, all good friends of mine who are running. We have a really great slate of strong, empowered female candidates this year. They all spoke at my vigil for Ruth Bader Ginsburg a few weeks ago, and it was just this moment of like almost zen, like the future is in good hands if people like this are stepping up to the plate and crushing stereotypes and smashing the patriarchy.
Right on. I couldn't love that more. And you said something that was just amazing. There are candidates, and you know them. We all see them. They're they have consultants from the party. They have, talking points. They have, corporate donors. They have parsed words, like you said, access, right? There's a difference in saying healthcare is a right. Everyone deserves quality access, right? That BS line, and saying healthcare is a right. I'm going to fight for universal healthcare, right? That's making it a right. And you said, talking from the perspective of a mom, and you said these are the things that keep me up at night, right? And when I mentioned Katie Porter, like, she's real, like you're real, and people deserve that kind of representation rather than a corporate shill. So if you're watching this again, it's shannaforpa.com. Imagine her on the floor, putting this passion into these issues, on these people-centric policies that would benefit, not just people that are sycophantic to her partisan, leanings or whatever, but, actually benefiting the constituents of her district. That, we'd be blessed to have, people like Shanna representing us in, PA State House and everywhere, basically. So, I thank you for, obviously thank you for being a teacher. That's not an easy job either, but, thank you for running and then running again, right? A lot of people run once and then get discouraged, especially in a red area that, it's an uphill climb. It's not easy, right? It's a bit Sisyphus-like, right? Or whatever, but, you're, much credit to you and everyone that you mentioned, what you call that slate of people around that area, boy, that is so inspiring to hear that, right? And there are a lot of Democrats and progressives running in red areas and making a lot of waves, and a lot of districts where the party may have just could have dismissed or given up on, right? And I imagine this hasn't had a serious Democratic candidate in a lot of years. I didn't look it up, but that would be my guess.
You are right.
Yeah. And we can flip the PA House, right? How critical.
And the Senate. We can do the House and the Senate this year. Both are within our grasp. We only need 4 to get to a tie in the Senate, but 5, and we're that 5th seat to get a true majority. And we're only 9 away in the House. And both are very doable. And we're working incredibly hard to make sure that happens.
Yeah, and that gerrymandering thing, that ballot subpoenaing thing, I think they did a piece on that in Rachel Maddow last week. Mm-hmm. And the representative Kenyatta, and I'm drawing a blank on his last name.
Malcolm Kenyatta. He is amazing. He was here. He came here last week on Monday. He did a stop in my district, and we did an event together. He is incredible. His passion. I can't wait to get in there and make some good trouble with him.
So that's who we need allies. Like, he needs Shanna as an ally, right, in that fight.
Yeah, so. And we've had incredible, Nikhil Saval, who is going to be the state senator in the 1st district, he primaried a sitting Democratic state senator and won overwhelmingly. And it's the same. We work together. We're on the phone all the time. We're fundraising together. His team is helping us because they know he's going to be there. But what good is it if you don't have other people there fighting with you to actually make the change? So I've been amazingly humbled by the outpouring of support from folks across the state, honestly, and across the country. They see the potential here.
Right on. Yeah, I can't wait to see you on the floor as Representative Danielson with your whiteboard going nuts, attacking those corrupt Republicans. Thank you for, like I said, thank you for running. Thank you for all you do. And, Godspeed November 3rd. Shannaforpa.com. Please go volunteer. You have phone banking, you have text banking. You don't have to be in the district in order to help out. You can donate. A grassroots campaign certainly needs donations more than anybody, right? So, every little bit goes to, I'm sure, literature and so forth, and outreach, and again, Shannaforpa.com. And thank you for taking some time to chat with me today. Like I said, I look forward to calling you Representative Danielson.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else? Any closing thoughts? Anything?
Just, ignore the polls and keep working. Just keep working. Nobody has this in the bag yet. We are in for an insane couple of weeks. Who knows what the results will be or when we will get them. But don't lose hope. Stop getting distracted by DC every 5 minutes. Find those local candidates and give them everything you've got, because we're going to change the world.
Yeah, here. You know what? I'm going to just throw another people. Like with when RBG passed away, there were Senate candidates that people started throwing their money at, right? Sarah Gideon, Amy McGrath, right? And they're not likely to win. Any any donation that could have went there could have gone to a race like this that would actually make a huge material difference, right? So they just sort of suck up all this money, unfortunately, and it's kind of like throwing bad money after bad money. And there are races, and that's why
I
I've been.
hope they do win.
Well, of course,
But we did see, actually, I will credit where credit is due. Act Blue did a great job. We did see a surge in donor. We had like over 100 new donors, like in like a day. It might have been 2 days, but there was definitely that energy. I think people realized the weight of the world was on Ruth Bader Ginsburg's shoulders, and that we need to pick up the slack now. And I think we are. And yeah, we're still very far away from the election. It's 4 weeks from tomorrow, but that's like a lifetime. So all of those donations make a huge difference in races like this. And we're bringing people out for the top of the ticket. They're not really working for us, but we're working for them. So money goes a lot farther here.
Yeah, that's the other thing. There's that reverse coattails theory, right? There are PACs like No Dems Left Behind that, if you can get voters out in a red district like yours, it benefits up ballot candidates, right? Even if they're not investing time or resources in a district like yours. So
right, and oftentimes they're not. So, but we are. Right? But we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Godspeed. So ShannaForPA.com. Yeah. Thank you. I will hope to talk to you again soon. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye.